Hey, 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 everybody. We're live, and I've got these two gentlemen with me here today to talk to you. First, please let me introduce Dacre Stoker, who is Bram Stoker's great-grandnephew. It is an honor, sir.
Thanks, Jared. Man, it's cool to be here with you, and I'm stoked, as I'm sure you are, to chat today. I have to beat you to that one, but this is going to be cool. And I tell you, hear that music, see those Dracula characters, and it's just Chris and I are just so excited to chat with you guys today and talk to fans. So, man, great to be here. Thank you for having us.
And I would also like to introduce Dr. Chris McAuley. A lot of you may know him from Star Wars and working on Doctor Who.
Yeah, and my cat Isis, who is just decided to start climbing around. But hey, that's the nature of everything. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here, Jared. I'm a big fan of CryptoComics. I love what you guys are doing and how you're trying to revolutionize the comic book market. So Stoker McAuley are really happy to support you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. I'm extending a welcome from us, but I'm also extending a welcome from everybody out there. Chat's already going crazy, so obviously everybody's excited. I'm going to start this off with the first question. For those who aren't familiar, tell us a little bit about the history of Dracula and Bram Stoker.
Well, the first thing is that Bram was born in Ireland. A lot of people think he was British. He wrote the novel when he's England. But here's the quick bullet points, Jared. Otherwise, we could be here all day. Born in Ireland in 1847, very sickly young child for the first 7 years of his life. 1847 was what they call Black 47. So cholera epidemics, potato famines, death, despair, horrible time to be born. But if you're going to be the future writer of Dracula, it's a great time to be born. And on top of that, to be a sickly child yourself for the first 7 years of your life, isolated in a different part of the house. And to keep him educated and interested, his mother, his nanny, told him cool stories of Irish folklore, mythology. And if you do any research, for the listeners, the fairies in Irish folklore are not Tinkerbell. This is their own versions of vampires, blood-sucking creatures. So Bram was raised, honestly on, the undead and had those visions growing up. He bounced out of his childhood illness. I'm sure there was bloodletting involved because one of his uncles was a famous bloodletter. So there again, the blood is the life. That's is stuck into his system. And he becomes a champion athlete. He finds himself, becomes big man on campus at Trinity College. But at the same time, he's also writing theatrical reviews because he loves the theater. He's an artist in his free time. He's starting his writing, and he gets a chance meeting with Henry Irving. And Henry Irving is this famous actor that comes to Dublin, puts on a show. Bram writes a cool review. Irving is egotistical. Oh, I got to meet this guy who wrote this great review. And make a long story short, they start a 27-year relationship where Bram is asked to go to London and work for Henry Irving, managing his theater. And during that time, again, I'm cutting this part short, Jared, I am convinced one of the most powerful roles that Henry Irving plays is Mephistopheles, this devil creature in the play Faust. And so that plus research Bram has done, plus his own warped sense of imagination, and this model of Henry Irving playing the devil for 27 years, that all works into what I call the perfect storm in Bram's life when he finally starts writing Dracula. Took him 7 years. It came out 1897, and as we say, the rest is history, and here we are today, still interested and chatting all about it, new discoveries, because it's still a great mystery, as what really was in Bram's head. And, guys like me and Chris are still digging up and finding cool stuff, turning them into graphic novels, into comics, into games. That's what makes it so fun to still be a part of his and promoting his legacy.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that is fantastic. I didn't know. So he was actually in a room by himself for 7 years?
Well, no, not like locked in that room, but he said in his one book that he wrote about his boss, for 7 years, I never knew what it was like to stand upright He was brought outdoors on occasion when the weather was nice. Chris will tell you how Irish weather is seldom, wonderful and beautiful to go outside, but brought outside and laid out in the park. So he did get a little fresh air. And, it wasn't like locked behind bars, but it was somewhat sequestered because his mother was worried about, what was making him sick. Either contagious to other people or could he get more sick?
Right.
So it was a fairly isolated 7 years. And think about it, when there's people dying out in the streets. And one of the stories, Jared, that his mom told him, which is incredible that Chris and I are working on, again, to bring it into a graphic form, is her experiences surviving a cholera epidemic. And that was an epidemic similar to what we've been going through at the beginning. Nobody knew what was causing it. And people were being misdiagnosed and buried prematurely because all the doctors and the nurses were the first ones to die. So imagine Bram being told the story that his mom survived it, and he's ill himself. And I can only imagine, and this is conjecture, that maybe he thinks, what the hell happened to me if somebody misdiagnosed me and buries me prematurely? So I am sure there is a lot of that going on, sadly going on in his life that kind of gives him this dark sense of imagination, which, when you think of other horror writers, there is weird stuff that goes on with all of them. This is kind of tame compared to, what some of the others went on to bring him some really cool stuff.
Right. Well, so what motivated you to reimagine the story of Dracula and put the Stoker name back onto contemporary publications?
Well, I mean, Chris McAuley has something to do with that, so I'll let him speak up in a moment because the guy is a creative force. He's a good friend as well. But as you guys saw at the beginning, this trailer at the beginning, and I love most of those films, and that's what's neat is they've evolved, but they have evolved in a way that they've completely changed what Bram Stoker created. That last image by Sebastian Icos was very similar to the way Bram described him. And when the book was turned into stage plays starting in 1924, the Dracula character made a very, large-scale change from this revenant from the grave, gnarly-looking old guy to becoming a suave, debonair Eastern European aristocrat to please the audiences. And then he got more sexy and more handsome and more debonair as we went on. So that's cool. But I do have to just break for a second. Rose Kirby asked a cool question. Have I been to Whitby Abbey? Yeah, about 10 times, Rose. I love the place. I go there doing performances. I've been there filming. And the tombstone that's really relevant in Whitby Abbey, which is so cool, Bram spent a week there studying to write the book, 2 more weeks with his wife. In his notes, he collected lots of names, about 60 names from the gravestones, like walked through the graveyard, taking the names and used the names of those characters in the novel Dracula because he wanted people to believe that some of this stuff was real. So he got real names of the 6 people. And one of them was Captain Swales, the seaman Swales, and his gravestone is right there. And the other one, Jared, is a suicide victim. And we all know the folklore about suicide victims, what they become. So, sorry, that's a slight deviation. But I think this is a great time to sort of tee it off back to Chris, because I wouldn't have done this. Yes, I've written a prequel and a sequel, but to actually bring it to graphic form, it was Chris's impetus to say, listen, the visualization of what Bram created has been lost. We've got to get it back. And I couldn't do that on myself. So that kind of is a great way to tee up my buddy Chris, my partner Chris, and Stoker McAuley to let him take it from there.
Doctor, please.
Well, Jared, if you read the novel Dracula, you'll notice that the cinematic interpretations, while they're very engaging, fantastic, and we have some, really powerful performances, we've all got our favorites. That's one of the reasons we queue up the video and we play it. We've all got our favorites. Everybody recognizes a Dracula from their childhood or from, from something that they've enjoyed watching. My personal one's Christopher Lee, to be honest. But, I don't judge. When you read the novel, you realize that Dracula, the very powerful, horrific, dangerous creation that Bram toiled over, has been lost. It has never been shown in cinematic media fully. The story has always been riffed on, but has never been complete. And, you know, the nuances of the novel, as powerful as they are, can be quite difficult to be plainly or clearly perceived by the modern audience. So Dacre and I, what we're seeking to do is to unlock the secrets of Dracula, and not just Dracula, but everything that Bram had created, the entire Gothic universe of Bram Stoker. The man was a complete genius, and he's known for one book, and that's what my personal stake in this, which I'm stokered to be a part of. There we go. That actually did slightly kill me to say, but there we go. Is that I produce work that promotes the entirety of Bram Stoker's legacy. And Dacre's done a fantastic job with that, with his prequels, sequels, his factual books. Keep an eye out for the Lost Journal of Bram Stoker, which is going to be re-released by Hellbound Books as well. But more on that later.
What?
Dacre's got this fantastic legacy. He is the guy that keeps me grounded when I am writing these stories. Now, also we're modernizing Dracula in a way that we're bringing forward Dracula in various different genres. So as a comic book writer, as somebody who loves film, as somebody who's a gamer, I recognize that there's various genres, and I want to onboard everybody to the Dracula folklore in various ways. So we've got classic Dracula, and what we do is we take classic Dracula, we have origin stories, we have actually sequels, but more importantly, we have the complete vision of Dracula that has never been seen before in this format. Dacre has been spending roughly about 15 years piecing this together. I am taking that knowledge and I am crafting that into a script. There's an opening of Dracula that has never been seen before. There are moments in the castle which are very powerful, which have never been seen before in this format. And there's an ending which actually ties into a lot of the start of the book, which has never been seen before. Dacre and I have written a story. It's actually coming out in Horrorzine, and it deciphers the events that happened between Bram Stoker and his original publisher, and Archibald and Constable. And Bram maintained that Dracula was a true story. Now, I'm just going to let that sit for a minute. Bram maintained that Dracula was a true story. Now, we don't know in what context he meant that in. I don't think that he meant it in a meta context as we would understand today. I think he meant that in a very real context. And one of the most fascinating things that Dacre and I are teasing together is the reality of Dracula. So we are producing that the contemporary audiences through graphic novels, through novels with other celebrated authors, video games, really in a really exciting sort of turn of events. We have a documentary which is being looked at the minute, and the process is being greenlit. And this is where we look at where the name Dracula comes from. You know, who Dracula was based on, the locations, the Irish mythology, because there's a rich vampire mythology from Ireland that has been unexplored. Dacre's explored that in Dracul. Dacre and J.D. Barker explored that in Dracul, and there's another story coming out in another horror magazine which I would love to tell you about, but until I can't tell anybody until next month. It's very much linked to the Irish vampire mythology, and I'm going to butcher the name here, and Dacre probably will help me with this. There was a vampire legend from the days of the High Kings of Ireland called Abertach, and he was. Did I get that right? My God,
You
all
should
right.
get a little more than I, being an Irishman yourself.
I know. My Celtic, my Irish language skills, I've just refreshed them. I refreshed them last year. But the story about Abertach is that he was this magician. He sort of tormented a kingdom. I think it was Drogheda. He tormented a kingdom in Drogheda, and he demanded tribute from the king. So the people of the village banded together, killed him, and thought he was dead.
Wow!
But he came back, and started to demand blood from humans and blood from animals. So eventually, what happened was he was slain. He was buried upside down. It was a ash tree, which is, I think, it's very important to the Dracula mythology as well. He was buried upside down in an ash tree. The field still exists. The tree still exists, and any attempt to cut down the tree has been unsuccessful. Farmers have tried chainsaws. Chainsaws won't start. They've tried pulling it out with tractors. The tractors just drive off by themselves. They've tried digging it out, and they've been struck by lightning. So in that area, nobody is really allowed to touch that tree. So there are very interesting myths in Ireland linked to vampires. So we're hoping to just go through the length and breadth of this documentary. And more importantly than all of this, the book ends. Dacre has discovered where the real Castle Dracula actually is from literature.
What?
So we are presenting this to the contemporary audience through various media with an agenda to portray the original Dracula. It's a unique experience that we're not re-envisaging Dracula. We're not bringing a new Dracula to the fore. Yes, we have different genres. We've got cyberpunk, we've got sci-fi, we've got steampunk. But with classic Dracula, we're actually bringing back the original Dracula, which is very, very powerful.
Oh, that's the legacy. That's where that is fantastic. I mean, you see people and they take something with a legacy and then they try and they think they can create something better. And I love that you guys are more focused on bringing forward what was great, because Bram Stoker's Dracula was great. And the fact that I didn't realize you were such a detective, Dacre. That's pretty impressive.
Literary forensic detective. That's what I call myself.
Ooh, that's like a title for kings. Literary detectives.
Come on, that's good enough. I mean, let me touch on that, because there've been two cool questions I think are worthy of bringing it up. And that this is as a result of literary forensic detection. And one is, was Dracula a result of the Black Plague? The whole concept of vampirism, we could go on for hours on, but I'm going to tell you what I knew, what Bram Stoker knew, because that's the relevant point here. But vampirism in general, and he did see a few treatises of these things in the London Library and in the Whitby Library during those 7 years when he was doing his research. And that's what Chris is right. For 15 years, I've been dogging this stuff down, finding all those books, reading the entire, looking at the notes. But contagious diseases like the Black Plague that went through Europe, what we notice is during the 16 and 1700s when that was happening, there was a lot of this concern of vampirism because people didn't understand why people were dying and why somebody died in their family. Then the next 2 or 3 days later, somebody else would die. And then somebody else would die. And so this whole contagious thing, living in close quarters and not quite understanding the germ theory, somebody would die and everybody would do all their very complicated mourning rituals. But then somebody else in the family died. And so what was going on in their mind was, God wouldn't do this to us. We've been told that God, if you do right, work hard in the fields, do the thing, be treated well, good afterlife, all that. And so what people would do is they'd lose faith in their faith in the church, and superstition would kick in, and superstition would say, there's an undead creature that's coming out, or the spirit of Uncle Fred is coming out of the grave and sucking the life out of the rest of you because you're not mourning properly or you're not doing X, Y, and Z. So that was a prevalent sort of concept, was contagious diseases being misinterpreted as vampirism. So they'd go to the gravesite and, with the town elders and the priest, open up the coffin, and they'd see what they're not used to seeing is a bloated, partially decomposed body. And what they would obviously see was, some of the biological juices dripping out of the mouth, coming out of the nose. They'd see the gases that would make the body bloat. And their first thing in their mind was, oh my God, this guy has just drunk blood from somebody. He's full of blood from little Johnny or little Susie. So what would they do? They would stake him into the ground, stake him to keep him there. And there was reports of a few of these where they'd stake them. The gases that would make them bloat would go through the vocal cords and make the noise of, oh! So they were convinced that his body was undead, the dead undead coming out of the grave. So that's a short version of it. And I'll tell you this, in Bram's notes for Dracula that actually live in the Rosenbach Museum in Philadelphia, he actually had a newspaper clipping from the New York World newspaper from 1896 that described, Jared, exactly the same thing I just described taking place in New England during the tuberculosis outbreak of the late 1800s. So it wasn't just the 16 and 1700s in the middle of nowhere in Eastern Europe, but it was in New England in the late 1800s. So it's not like just uneducated people. It shows the power of superstition and the power of people wanting to believe. They want answers, and they'll turn to things if they don't get them. So that's the long-winded answer. Sorry, too. Was Dracula born from Black Plague? Yes, indirectly it was. So yeah, and that's okay. Here's the question from Rose: does the name Dracula come from Dracul, meaning drainer of the blood? The name, Bram actually saw the name Dracula in two books, one in the Whitby Library, one in the London Library, and it was Prince Dracula of Wallachia. Bram simply turned it and used it as Count Dracula from Transylvania, which is right next door. And the guy's history that was in this book is really cool. Obviously, he was an impaler. He was a brutal ruler. He did all these incredibly horrible things, but he was actually a hero for his people in Wallachia, holding off the Ottoman Empire for 7 years because, the Ottomans are trying to work their way into Christian Europe. And Order of the Dragon, the Dracula order, this was what Vlad's father was. So he was Order of Dracul. You add in Romanian, if you put the A at the end of someone's name, it's son of. So now you get Dracula. Vlad Dracula III is the son of the father who was an original Order of the Vampire. So again, that's kind of short versions. And Jared, that's the kind of cool stuff that I dig for. I meet people all over the world. I go to cool conferences. But it just enriches not only my life, but when Chris and I sit down together to write books and comics, this is the stuff that we interject. This is the stuff that we use. All the hidden things from Dracula Chris talked about, the ending, what he knew about, all the edits. That's years of digging and finding what did Bram really leave behind us. And that's what makes it so interesting.
Can I interject slightly? I just want to interject slightly.
Yes, Chris.
So being the Irishman here, I have the bat for the Irish team. There is a possibility that Dracula was an Irish name. And I'm going to butcher this. I'm really sorry for original Celtic speakers. But it's Dracula. And that could mean evil blood.
Yeah.
Bad blood. Now, I have, and it might be a fanciful proposition, but because Bram, leeches were used in Bram and there was bloodletting, there was something in his head about that as well, about the contamination of the blood. Now, if you read the original novel, you'll see a lot about Mina and the contamination of the blood. And that's actually, if you want to start delving deeper and darker into mythological religious history, there is always a link to something bad in the blood whenever somebody goes wrong or slightly wrong or whatever. There's a taint in the blood. There's a lot of Irish mythology about that. A lot of mythology is actually comparatively around the world. So I just have to interject there. But that's something that Dacre and I do look at. We do look at the Irish connection.
I think, Chris, you're absolutely right. And I've gone on record saying this because you know, when people look at writers, and you've got two of them on the screen, and Jared, I'm sorry, I don't know if you write or just do an incredible job doing interviews, but I mean, here's and many people watching probably write. You are what you absorb. You know, you listen to things, and I'm sure, just as Chris is saying, little Bram, you know, when he was probably 4, 5, 6, and 7, being bloodlet, when, you know, his mother and his uncle, the famous bloodletting doctor, is talking, oh, he's got bad blood, you know. But this was commonplace in Irish society, that they were worried of bad blood, cholera, epidemics of potato famines and sickness and things that come from it. So he grew up with that stuff. So my thing is, it goes in the back of your brain, and then years later, when you start writing the story and you see the name Dracula in a book, and it sounds like Dracul, and it all comes together as a puzzle, it's like, that's, to me, that's a sort of revelation of probably what happened to Bram. And I think Chris is right. Part of it is Irish heritage. It's combined with his research and what his own imagination decided to do to put the book together.
And when we release the documentary, you will find out some interesting revelations about the name of Dracula and the origin of where he comes from. And this is something for 124 years people have been trying to discover. And this is what makes the Stokerverse, Stoker McAuley, very powerful. We have that information, and we are going to bring that out.
So when is this coming out?
Can't tell you that. Can't tell you that. Actually, we're in pre-production. I can't tell you officially. We're in pre-production stage.
Oh.
I'm working on the scripts with Dacre, and we are hoping to begin filming at the end of the year.
You know, obviously, COVID is slowing down the ability to put everything. So it's like we're jumping at the bit. We're ready to go. We've got this incredible, you know, story and script and ready to go. I've done a lot of work already on the Romanian side. But no, it's to me, it's going to be a wonderful aha moment. What we've all done together to sort of draw back the curtain, Jared. It's like drawing back the curtain with all this research that we've done, and find out, you know, what really went into this making of the story. What really is behind all this stuff.
Hey, it's incredible how you guys are really carrying the torch for Bram. You know, it seems that Bram was cut almost a little short because he had so much to give, and the fact that you guys are picking up that mantle and moving forward with it in a beautiful way. Not in a way where you're trying to take it and make it yours, but you're trying to find and piece together the history so that you bring forth really what he was what he was bringing forth, I guess is the best way to put it. Because I mean, this is a supreme legacy, and actually, this is going to jump me into the next question. The story of Dracula has been around for 124 years. What do you believe is so appealing about Bram's story that it still resonates with audiences today?
You know, it's funny, Chris, I'll go first. I get that answer a lot. I get that question a lot. And I try to can I get creative and come up with a different answer? And the answer to that is no. I'm going to give you what is straight from the heart, because, you know, there is a terror about the afterlife. You know, people generally are very concerned about what's going to happen when life as we know it as mortals is over. And so you have religion that tries to, you know, help you ease that transition from one state to another. This side, this vampirism and this whole concept that this is not a bad alternative. You know, this is an interesting alternative. It's not rosy, for God's sake. I mean, immortality has its benefits, but also its detractors. You're around for a hell of a long time, and, you know, unless you're looking at Twilight or something like that, then nobody really likes you. But when you consider the power, the allure, the sexuality of it, that possibility that immortality could exist in some form, I think that's the allure. And if you want to believe it or not, it's still an allure because it's dangled out there to you. And I think Bram knew what he was doing, and so did all the other writers since then. And I mean Stephen King, Anne Rice, all the others that have created these really incredible storylines, movies, streaming shows. It has to do with this afterlife and what does that mean? And it provides a possibility. That, Jared, I think is the nutshell. Now, of course, we can go into tremendous detail. Chris and I have this conversation a lot because when we create stories, we want to capitalize on this stuff.
Right.
So let's
this is the interesting stuff that drives a story. These are what drive the story, right? Yeah. These little nuances, these little interesting tidbits and facts.
The interesting thing that I have for Bram is that I'm a Freemason. Bram Stoker is a Freemason. I have a duty to ensure his legacy, and that's actually one of the reasons that Dacre and I, we've kind of bonded quite well because there's a trust there. But Bram was a very complicated individual when it came to spirituality. I come from a very divided society. It still is divided, Catholic, Protestant, whatever. It's tough, and it's tough to go up there. And Bram saw it all. What he did was he rejected traditional religious viewpoints. He was a seeker. He looked for something more spiritually, and that led him to Freemasonry. I believe, and I have to be very careful what I say, but I believe that also led him to the Golden Dawn with Aleister Crowley and W.B. Yeats and various other very influential writers of that era that were involved in that.
Wow.
His exploration of the supernatural doesn't begin and end with Dracula. A lot of his work is linked to the supernatural, is linked to the Gothic horror stuff. I think he deserves to be recognized along with Poe. His work is distinct from Poe. There are some overlaps, such as what we've now termed Divergence of Race and Poe's Black Cat, but the flavor is very distinctly different. And I believe that Bram was somebody who understood the mystic arts. I believe that Bram understood an awful lot of, for example, I'll just be very quick here, but Pamela Coleman Smith, who illustrated the tarot cards with A.E. Waite. A.E. Waite was a Freemason as well. She was brought in from literally the streets by Bram Stoker and Henry Irving. She painted the backdrops for some of the theatre productions, but she was the person who illustrated what we now term as the Rider-Waite tarot cards, the industry standard tarot cards. There is a lot of esoteric knowledge and secrets, and if you are somebody who is linked to the occult, looking at Bram's work, even the words in Lair of the White Worm, Dracula inviting Jonathan Harker into his castle, those are words that are used very similarly in Freemasonry. Lair of the White Worm has a lot of that as well. Edgar Allan Poe has a few Masonic references as well. But Bram was steeped in this deep spirituality, a well of spirituality that has been suppressed for centuries. And I believe that is part of the power of his writing. And I think that's why Dracula endures. Also, we have to be realistic, and we have to say, the moviegoers keep Dracula alive. Everybody who, looks at the Dracula comic from Marvel keeps Dracula alive. It's like Blade, you're keeping Dracula alive. But it all came from this one source, very powerful source. And that's what Dacre and I are really hoping to bring back and dip into that well again and bring that out and make it freely available to everybody. So that's what I think. I think that's why Dracula endures, because it's something powerful. And it's not just one of Bram's work. It's not just the Bram's only work. It's one of Bram's work. And there are links to various things that Bram did, which we are exploring, that tie in with Dracula.
Oh, wow. So that actually segues really good into my next question. What are you guys doing to modernize the story of Dracula to appeal to the contemporary audiences?
Well, okay. I guess I get to go first to give Chris a chance to catch his breath. There's so many things based. I mean, first of all, let me back up one more step. Bram didn't leave an autobiography. He didn't tell us much about his writing of Dracula. One interview only has been discovered, a series of notes, 125 pages, one typescript, which is simply the manuscript that has now been typed with lots of notes in it, deletions and additions. And strangely enough, we'll get to this in another part of your show, an alternate version that showed up in another continent, which again we'll get to.
What?
So,
okay,
okay. We'll get to that, Jared. But so what we're trying to do, what Chris and I are trying to do, is open up the box of things that I've discovered and reintroduce them to the modern audience through either graphic or in our graphic novels or in comics or in our film documentary or in games, so that we realize that, yeah, we could simply create a annotated version of Dracula and shove all that stuff back in again, but get to a wider audience nowadays. Chris has encouraged me and convinced me that the visual is the way to go. And in visual, you've got comics, graphic novel, games, and I'm all for that. And one also an ironic reason I'm for it, Jared, is that Bram would have approved, and many steps that both Chris and I take, we always think, what would Bram say? Bram himself won prizes from the Royal Hibernian Society as a young boy for his art. He actually was a founding member of the Dublin Painting and Sketching Club. I've actually got some sketches purchased off of, online, what do you call them? Those auctions of some sketches that Bram did. So he was visual. He was a theater guy for 27 years. Of course, he's visual. He didn't get a chance to do that during his life. He wrote very visually, but it's up to guys like me and Chris to bring it to a new audience. So that's my sort of challenge, is to bring those things, those little nuggets, those Easter eggs that will help people get to know Bram a little bit better, because he's long gone and he can't wave his own banner. But also, what is it within his story? What are the context of his story that resonate in a certain way that lets people know what Bram was thinking of in his creative process? And that's where, again, Chris comes in, because he's a master of taking these ideas, turning them into scripts, turning them into those, into graphic novels, integrating them into games. That's what I think. And Chris will hopefully agree and tell you what he does with this stuff. But the modern audiences, I think, would love Bram's work. And also, let's be honest, he was writing in a 19th century, with verbiage that's a little tough sometimes to, it's a mouthful. So we're trying to also soften it a bit to make it easier to digest and enjoy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And now I'm gonna transition a little bit, just because you guys have mentioned that you are bringing him into these new modes and mediums more visually. So, Chris, can you tell us about your experiences working in comics?
Yeah, I don't even know where to start now. I've been in comics now for about 5 years. I was very, very lucky. My first mentor was Pat Mills, who created 2000 AD. Pat's known as the godfather of British comics. He's been a tremendous mentor. I've also been mentored by Neil Gaiman and Grant Morrison. So if Grant's watching, he might be. Hi, mate. I've had a very privileged mentorship. I have also worked with 2000 AD colorist John Charles, who, I'd actually color a lot of comics as well. I just enjoy the process of it. And John was a great mentor. I have a lot of love for him. He's brought out his own creation, Techno Freak, which has now reached American shores, I believe. And I've colored issues 2, 3, 2 and 3 for him. So he was a great mentor. But yeah, I've worked on Batman. I've worked actually written a Batman story with legendary Disney Imagineer Terry Hardin Jackson. That was a real privilege. Terry's known for working on Star Wars. She started her career with Jim Henson. She created the Proton Packs, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Slimer for Ghostbusters 1. She worked on Ghostbusters 2. She's
one of my heroes.
She's an incredible woman, you know. And Disney picked her up, and she worked on the Haunted Mansion, and she's worked down on the Star Wars park and all of that sort of stuff, you know. So it's been a great experience through comics. I do a lot of work with indies. I volunteer my time for indie comics because I want to foster people's dreams. A lot of what Dacre and I are doing through the Stokerverse is trying to foster people's dreams. You know, every employee that we have, and I don't even like to say employee, every partner that we have, what we're trying to do is foster their dreams. We're very, very, very lucky to have a lot of people in the team who we're fostering for writing and artwork. So we've got Nicholas, we've got Frederick Roseman, we've got our social media expert Andy. We've recently welcomed in our personal assistant and media marketing guru Kate Newman. So if Kate's parents are watching, hello Kate, Kate's parents. Wait
a minute. Now, speaking of Kate, is that Little Miss Batman?
That is yeah. She's a big Batwoman fan.
Well, I think since you mentioned Little Miss Batman, we're going to take a pause real quick. I know everybody's like, "What? Talking? Are you crazy?" I'm sorry, guys, but we want to do a giveaway, Chris. We want to do a giveaway.
Let's do a giveaway, Jared. Go on. I know you've been itching from about 5 minutes into it, so go for it.
Finally, I can let loose. All right. So the first giveaway is going to be from Dacre. Dacre, I want you to come up with a question that you can ask the audience, and the first person to get us the right answer in chat will win a swag bag. Now, the second giveaway is going to be from Chris, because he knows exactly who we're giving it to, and he's gonna say it, and it's gonna be awesome. So first, Dacre, you're up.
Okay, I mentioned earlier in our show, Jared, that in another continent there was an alternate version of Dracula that has been discovered, and it's been published in 2017 by a friend of mine, Hans D. Roos, and I wrote the intro. And the only thing I'll tell you is the original edition in this country was published in 1901, and nobody knew what a different version of the story it was than the Dracula we know. What the question is, what country was this alternate version of Dracula published in 1901?
And while we wait,
I want
that
enter this. I want to enter this, but I can't.
Wait, is that right? That's not right, right? Is that right? Did he right? Is it right?
It's not Ireland.
Okay. So that's not the right answer. So keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. Now, while we're whoa.
It's not India.
Is that?
It's not Australia.
No. All right. Keep them coming, guys. You got it. You got a chance. Wait, what's this one right here? On
I don't know what country that is.
I don't know what that is either. Dominic's coming in with Spain, Italy. We got Spain.
We got Spain, Italy. Now, Sweden is close. I'm just telling you, T3.
Ooh. He just gave everybody a hint. I hope you guys are paying attention.
You a hint. Yeah, it's close.
Oh, wait. We got
no China, no Switzerland. Man, we are getting a little farther away with China.
So we're just going around it.
Keep thinking Switzerland. Keep thinking,
Norway.
Oh well, then I also wanted to just showcase Polar Nights, the perfect evolution of beards.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you, Polar.
T3 got it. T3 got it, guys.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yes. It's Norway. It was Norway, yeah.
Iceland.
Oh, Iceland. They're Iceland. Yes, right.
I was
Very
like,
cool.
wait a minute.
It's very close.
Iceland T3 Comics, man, walking away with
There
the
we go.
swag on nice one, guys. You guys were really pouring it out. I had no clue, so I was just like, gosh, I hope somebody gets it right.
So here's
Okay.
the short version, just the real short version. Some reason
Please.
it showed up in Iceland. It had to be serialized in a newspaper first because the rules in foreign countries for foreign authors, you got to put the book in newspaper first. And it showed up in Iceland, and then the Icelandic newspaper also had a publishing company underneath them. And in 1901, they published it in a book called, I can't pronounce it, Morkrit's Power of Darkness.
Yeah, that's one.
Power of Darkness.
Oh, wow.
And what's so cool though is a month after that was published by Hans de Roos, who annotated, I did the foreword to it. It was discovered that in Sweden, and that's why when I said close, it actually appeared in Sweden first, but not 1901. It was 1889 in Sweden in a newspaper there. But they never published it in book form. But I got to give you a hint right now. A friend of mine in Sweden has got the whole thing translated in English. So what they found out was the Icelandic edition that did come out in 2017 that I wrote the intro for, and DeRoos did a hell of a good job, is only about 2/3 the length of the one discovered in Sweden, because somehow all those newspapers didn't make it all the way over to Iceland. It must have fallen off the boat. So Icelandic guys didn't have the full version to translate. And the Swedish guy is now translating the whole thing. And again, these are more little nuggets, and that's coming out in January of this year. S.T. Joshi, the writer, has been helping them translate, and guess who's writing another intro for it? Mine. But these are cool little nuggets that Chris and I get to use. Again, when we play with our Dracula character, it's like, man, did Bram write this? Did somebody translate it differently? You know, what liberties were taken,
Right.
but it's gold. It's gold, and Chris and I can use that in our exploitation.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. So, Chris, who does the second swag pack go to?
A lot of people who've been on chat tonight, or this afternoon, depending on your time zone, have been encountering Chipmouse, or as we like to call her, Little Miss Batman, and it has to go. It has to go to Kate Newman. Kate has been a friend of mine for about a year and a bit. She's had an impact on the Stokerverse in the last 2 days. And she's actually going to be my personal assistant. She's going to be my PA. So
That's quite the announcement.
Yeah,
quite the promotion she just got, right?
Yeah, yeah. So she's put a lot of work into the Stokerverse. So this is sort of a special little thank you for the work she has put in, what she's about to put in. And yeah, I don't know if she realizes what she's got herself into, but yeah, thank you very much, Kate. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Thank you. It's Kit, right? I said that right?
Kate. Yeah, Kate. Yeah.
Okay. And thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for joining the Stokerverse. A matter of fact, we're going to give away a third one just because everybody's having so much fun. So on this third one, what should we do, guys? What should we do to get somebody a chance? Now, anybody who's already won a swag pack, don't try, because we're not going to let you. Should we go up with another question? That was pretty fun. Or I know, I got one, guys. I got one. Okay, so we got a badge. You guys probably don't know what this is. We got a badge. So there's a badge in the marketplace for this spotlight, which is going to be awesome. So we're going to do a random redemption from the badge. So when we give out the badge code, those who go in and they get the badge, we will be able to see on our platform who redeems that badge, and then we will be picking a random winner, and we will announce that winner. So that actually I'm going to do a little bit later because my team has to make sure that they get all their ducks in a row, because I just kind of threw that at them. So so we're going to continue on, because I got the next question keyed up, which I think is going to be right in line. We talked about, Chris, how you've been working in comics, that brought out the Stokerverse, which is really kind of what's brought Bram Stoker's into this realm. So I wanted to say, tell us about Stokerverse and what your vision is for this endeavor. Where did the idea come from, and how did you two connect?
It was a very progressive thing, actually. It's one of those. Dacre and I have great ideas together, and I love ringing this guy. I love working with him. He's one of my best friends now, and I get to work with one of my best friends. It's fantastic. But it all stemmed from a comic book called Dracula, Lord of the Future, which was commissioned by 123 Go. So if Phoebe's watching this, thanks, Phoebe. You started all this. 123 Go is an artistic collective. It's a very popular indie comic book publication. And I volunteer my work for it because I believe in the visions of the artists and writers. And she said to me, look, write something for me. You've worked on The Mandalorian. You've worked on various big properties. Write something for me about maybe a vampire Dracula or something, So I wrote a 4 or 5 page strip for a horror anthology, and it was basically Dracula in space. And I tried not to make it as hokey as it actually sounds, but it was a Weyland-Yutani style company that kidnaps Dracula and basically experiments upon him for all sorts of wonder drugs, right? So cure your liver, cure cancer, do all sorts of things. What made it very different was that I found myself getting drawn into the head of Dracula. So in this very clinical environment, full of these doctors standing over him, he's chained to this table with silver chains. He's burning. He's in a lot of pain. And so a voice came into my head, and it was, I have always been used to violence, but never such indignity. And it repeated itself twice. And I realized that I'd found my Dracula for that comic. So I hit the delete key. I held the delete key down. Everything disappeared. And I rewrote this thing with this. And writers know what I'm talking about, right? I just went, there's 2.5 hours of work gone. I don't care. I've got this flash of inspiration. And I start to craft this comic. It's just a couple of pages. And anybody who's tried to do a couple of pages of a strip knows it's quite difficult to get all your ideas into 4 or 5 pages. But that was the key, where we had visions of Dracula and his mistreatment by humans. So with Van Helsing, we have him in the Wild West. He just has these visions so that the reader can see the conflict that he's had. And then he's kind of chained up in this place. I have to admit, that was a very sympathetic Dracula. But then he gets out. So he tears his arm off with his teeth and goes in a bit of a killing spree. So on a space station, I started to think, well, what would Dracula do in a killing spree? So there's scientists out fixing the satellite in the space station, and he comes behind them, starts to rip them apart quite happily, and their blood's crystallizing. And we have, we have several pages of this pristine 2001 Kubrick space station, and we've got, his claws basically covered with blood everywhere. Now, I was very lucky. I got a 2000 AD artist called Colin Nat Maxwell, and he portrayed the whole thing. It ended up being the anthology became a smash hit. We ended up with our anthology beside Captain America and Spider-Man in various American comic shops. And I was very excited. But before that happened, I sent the script to Dacre. And I was very concerned because I had a lot of respect for Bram. I mean, it's one of those things that I went to Trinity University. I had read most of Bram Stoker's works, and I was concerned that I was portraying the character in a way that was disingenuous or would have affected Bram Stoker's legacy. So I sent him, and I said, if you don't want this to go ahead, I can just change it to another vampire name. It's fine. My heart was basically saying, I'm fed up with all these lukewarm crappy, and if I'm allowed to say it, shitty interpretations of Dracula. They get churned out year after year after year. It's mostly cinematic travesties that people pick up from the bargain basement of some DVD pile. I was fed up with it. So and Dacre came back to me, I think it was that day, and Dacre was like, I quite like this. Can we talk? So Dacre and I chat, and we're having all sorts of conversations because I currently live in Canada. Dacre's Canadian. He's an Olympic athlete in Canada. There we go. There's another thing most people don't know about Dacre. But we're having this conversation about Ireland and Canada, and it's and he said to me, what about bringing some of Bram Stoker's classic works to graphic novel? How do you feel about that? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And immediately all the images started to come to my head. The Secret of the Growing Gold, really dark, macabre stuff like the Judge's House, stuff that Bram had written that a lot of contemporary audiences don't know. And it's really dark, deep stuff. And I thought, right, okay, why not? Let's do that. This is really important. Then it kind of moved on to, after a couple of phone conversations, Chris, what did you do with Dracula? And then I had all these origin story ideas, and Dacre's like, oh, let me tell you about this. That fits in with this, and that we do this, and we can do this, and we can do. So then the origin stories blossomed. We got a publisher very, very quickly for this stuff. Paul Andrews, AUK. So we did our first graphic novel came out of the gate, The Virgin's Embrace, and I really hesitate to use the original title for what Bram used, but we all have to remember Bram was of his time. This was not an offensive slur when it was used, but it is based on Bram Stoker's The Squaw. I couldn't use that name. I refused to. Dacre and I were like, no, we can't use that. And we completely regenerated the story. Dacre and I have put a lot of extra narrative in there. I don't like villains that are black and white, so we've crafted the character to make him a little more grey. So as you read and reread the story, you question, was he a villain, or was he somebody who's a victim of circumstance or a victim of fate or whatever? That's our first graphic novel, which is out now.
Which is and actually we have a YouTube video to show of the Virgin's Embrace. If you all right, let's do it. Virgin's Embrace, please, gentlemen.
It's a very dark story. It's haunting. It's savage. Disturbing. The Virgin's Embrace is coming very soon. By Bram Stoker.
So just to jump quickly into that, the lady whose voice that is Jessica Martin. Uh-huh. If you're a Doctor Who fan, you will know Jessica Martin from the 7th Doctor story, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. She also illustrated the entire graphic novel that we have. She's well known. She's actually award winning for her expressive faces, and that's why Dacre and I chose her, because she's the ability to craft these expressions. Dacre and I craft horror in such a way that it's very human. Yes, we have elements of the supernatural, but it's a very human thing, and it's something that you can relate to. And I think if you can relate to horror, it makes it more terrifying. And Jessica has done an incredible job on that. Nobody's illusion that's a tenth of the chilling atmosphere of the actual product.
Wow!
Go out
now,
Oh,
so that's the voices Dracula.
No, that's
image.
something else. No, that's something else. So that's our first graphic novel we have out. That is really the sort of me answering your question of how Dacre and I got together and the first product that came from that. I think Dacre wasn't the very first conversation we had. It was basically, let's regenerate the Virgin's Embrace, let's regenerate the story.
Yeah, that was one of the stories. You know, I think you asked me, you know, what are the Bram Stoker short stories that you like the most? And I said, well, this is on top of the list because, again, going back to my forensic literary detectiveship, I am convinced that story is semi-autobiographical. I'm convinced that is Bram Stoker and Florence on their honeymoon. I found out that Bram and Irving and the rest of the Lyceum Theater troupe traveled to Nuremberg en masse to go and study the set, you know, the castles for the set design for the play Faust that they were about to stage in Lyceum. That's the detail-oriented Bram Stoker that there was. He completely revolutionized the authenticity of the costumes, the set designs, the dialect, everything on stage. So it's like nowadays, if you're going to do your research and have somebody go and look for where you're going to film something, you've got people looking all over for shots. They got on a train for a couple of days, traveled to Nuremberg, stayed there for 4 or 5 days. Bram used that to write this story. And that was, you know, to me, that's so cool because it's very Bram-esque. And to make it even cooler, later on we found Christopher Lee, who, as we all talked about early in the show, being probably, you know, the guy that played Dracula the most, and I also think the best. Not only is Christopher Lee an incredible actor in everything else he's done, but he held Bram Stoker's work in a special place. He actually rejected a lot of lines that certain screenwriters and directors wanted him to say over the years because he thought they were subpar. They weren't good. He just rejected them. But he also came out and said that he loved Lair of the White Worm, and he thought that The Virgin's Embrace was Bram's best short story, and it would make an incredible short movie one day. So it was like, Chris, we got to do this. This has got to be number one on the pile. And luckily, he had the contacts with Esther Cardella, who did that incredible cover art with the Virgin, the Nuremberg Virgin crushing the person, and Jessica Martin, who did the art. And I'll give you one more little tidbit, Jared. The research that I did about Bram Stoker and him coming to America 8 times with the Lyceum Theater troupe, he got to be friends with, and as did Irving, Buffalo Bill. And we laugh at it and say, what the heck is all that about? Buffalo Bill was a very famous showman at the time, and Irving and Stoker obviously were as well. Slightly different realms, the Wild West show with the Indians and the horses. But these guys were showmen. They were guys that helped Buffalo Bill bring the whole show across the Atlantic and starred in Edinburgh, Glasgow, London, all over Europe. These guys did it big because Bram and Irving helped them. But we all know that part of one of the characters in Dracula, and here's a question, see if anybody in the chat can get this before I blurt it out. What character in Dracula is loosely based on Buffalo Bill? And so while we're waiting for that to happen, I will also say that 2 other characters in stories that Bram Stoker wrote were loosely based on Buffalo Bill. And one of them is the Elias Hutchison character that Chris and I brought to life in this graphic novel, The Virgin's Embrace, which was formerly known as The Squaw. And the other one, and I'm sorry, it's everything, you know, at the time, Bram obviously wasn't thinking what we would laugh at the name of this character, but he wrote a story called The Shoulder of Shasta, as in Mount Shasta out in California. Again, they went out there for traveling with their theater group. He wrote a story about a character named Grizzly Dick. Grizzly Dick was this rough and tumble American frontiers guy wearing the leathers like Buffalo Bill. And again, slid into Dracula was this American actor or American character who was this guy. I've almost given it away now.
Oh, be careful. Wait, it wasn't Grizzly Dick, was it?
Grizzly, no, but again, it was a character like Grizzly Dick, but he's one of the main characters in Dracula. Who was it?
Come on, guys. Come on. Let's get somebody use Google.
I don't. Yeah,
goodness
Google.
sake.
I don't see.
It's not in Google. I think it's one of those things you either know or you don't.
Yeah, you got.
But it's-
You got to think now. Who's the one American in Dracula?
Exactly. Yes. Good clue.
Oh, it's the
Jared, stop it. Jared, you're not allowed to enter. If I can't enter, you can't enter. Stop it.
All right. I won't.
Because I do like the swag bags that you produce. So.
Don't worry. I'll see what I can do. See if I can round you up on. Just
So okay, in probably the movie that most of us know because it's a relatively Gary Oldman, the '92 Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola did. Okay, Keanu Reeves played this character. Okay, it's
I was going to say Keanu Reeves, but
Yeah,
I knew
yeah.
that would be wrong.
Well, Tyler
'Cause
Munson got it. Quincy, right? Quincy Morris is the American.
Nice.
Oh,
Okay? And he was. Go ahead, Chris.
I have to correct you here, right? No, you're not.
What?
It's not often I correct you,
Tell me.
What?
but Keanu Reeves didn't play Quincy Morris.
No,
in the film. He played
Jonathan Harker. Sorry.
But
Jonathan Harker.
we've just given away something very important.
What's that?
That Keanu Reeves, we're having a conversation with Keanu Reeves about possibly playing Quincy Morris in one of our audios.
What?
Maybe in the next one. Yes. So that's
Keanu?
yeah. So that I know exactly where your head was at, Dacre. So there's
Yeah.
no
I'm sorry.
there's no
I was
shame on it.
ahead.
There's
No,
no
thank
shame
you.
on it. No shame.
Wow, we just got this. So wow,
That's
that's
oh shit! That is actually there. You can go. There's an exclusive. There you go.
That's exactly right, T3. I think I might have. That's incredible. I mean, he was like Bill and Ted's. He was one of my first superheroes, if
Lovely,
you will.
lovely man. Quincy Morris. Quincy Morris was played by Billy Campbell. I think
So now Quincy Morris, so and that was based off of Wild Bill. Wild Buffalo Bill.
Let's back up so we get it. So I'm corrected.
Thank you.
Quincy Morris, Elias Hutchison, and Grizzly Dick, Bram's three characters in three different stories, all based loosely off of Bram's understanding, his friendship with Buffalo Bill Cody. So that's
Okay.
And I can't remember what the original question was because we've gone off on a tangent. No.
Oh, that's actually, you know what? And I'll just segue into the next question. Actually, you know what? Actually, if you don't mind, I would like to hand out the badge to all the wonderful people who have been waiting so vigilantly for. Are you guys cool with that?
Sure. Go for it.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to share screen here real quick. So anyone and everyone who wants to get this badge, if you have an account, get into your account. If you don't have an account, you can actually go to cryptocomics.com/u/Dr. Chris, and you can use one of his invites to create an account. Then, as you see, there's the button. After you create your account, you go to your dashboard, and you slowly scroll down, looking at all the awesome super coolness that is in the marketplace. And you come to my badges, which is awesome. Now, in my badges, you enter the code London Streets. So let's put that in there. And let's see. 1, 2, enter. Oh, nice. And that is the Stokerverse Award. So there is a badge in the marketplace called the Stokerverse to immortalize this spotlight with Dacre and Dr. Chris. You guys are so awesome. Thank you so much. So everybody, there's your badge. And those who don't have it, go get it, because we're going to be doing a lot of badges this weekend at CouchCon. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
Just very quickly, the artwork was by Nicholas, and he's one of our artists. So thanks very much, Nicholas. That was fantastic. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yes. Now I'm going to segue right into the next question, you guys, unless you have Anything else to add?
Nope.
All right, fantastic.
Keep going.
All right, so we are all about the immersive comic book experience here. I've heard that you are partnering with Tinman Games and Dreadnought Studios to really turn Stokerverse into turn Stokerverse into more of a rounded approach to getting that media out. Can you tell us more about this?
Chris, I'll let you.
Sounds as me question.
Yeah, it's definitely a you question. I'm on a need-to-know basis when we're creating stories. I don't really know where they all go, honestly. But the master here, Dr. Chris, does like, oh, are we talking Tin Man? Are we talking Dreadnought? Are we talking VR? What are we talking? Like, to me, it's let's suck the life out of everything we can out of all my research. And Chris, in his amazing brain, he will put it into the right place. So, Chris, you got to take that from here.
It's very kind of you, mate. Thank you. Anyway, look, I'm a big video game fan. I love video games. For those who are in the UK, I love computer games. I've been that way since a kid. I just love it. And I look at the Dracula games that have come out, and they're not great. The best Dracula game that's ever come out is the Castlevania series. They're fantastic. Yeah. Those guys have been the masters of crafting, their version of Dracula. That action adventure stuff. Castlevania Symphony of the Night was one of my favorites. And I'm actually playing through some of the Castlevania Lord of Shadows series as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Dracula in video games from Capcom. But yeah, my first experience with Dracula in video games was actually from a text-based RPG that came out in the 8-bit systems that were really specific to the UK, I think US as well, Commodore 64 and Spectrum. So everything that Dacre and I were doing, it kind of tied in with let's do video games. And I've been a fan of Tin Man Studios. So Tin Man Studios have done the Fighting Fantasy series. So they were used to the choose your own adventure with dice, and you would encounter monsters and all that sort of stuff. They've reinvigorated that. It's become a video game series. They've also worked with Judge Dredd. I'm looking at it right now, countdown to Sector 106. So they've partnered with 2000 AD, and they worked with Judge Dredd. They currently work with Warhammer, so they work on Warhammer 40k licenses, Legacy of Horus, Warhammer Underworld Online, which is fantastic. It's got a little steep learning curve, but if you love Warhammer, you'll get into it quite quickly. And they've worked on the various franchises, Miss Fisher, Sherlock Holmes, and they were actually a company I wanted to target when I started this because I'm such a fan of theirs and their narrative design. They pull you in with the narrative. I mean, the artwork's incredible, don't get me wrong, but the narrative is just so solid. And Dacre and I are all about narrative. And Dacre and I approached them. I gave them a brief synopsis, and we are now. This is breaking news, I suppose. We are now at the point where the game is in production stage. We have Mike Mignola, who created Hellboy and illustrated Hellboy. He's on the team. We have a couple of the 2000 AD artists as well. And the storyline, I have to be very careful what I say, the storyline takes place throughout the Dracula novel, and it's also part of a sequel with a new protagonist.
What?
That's all I'm allowed to say because I had to ask.
Don't say anymore. Don't get us in trouble. Okay, we're doing good.
So that's the first game, the Dracula VR game. We looked at VR, and VR is very powerful. I love VR gaming. I love The Exorcist VR, Resident Evil 7. Am I allowed to swear in this? Am I allowed to? I'm not even going to ask for a response. It scared the shit out of me. Resident Evil 7 was the one game. There's a part, if anybody's played it, where you have to climb down the steps, and it terrified me. I had to turn around. It's just one of those things that you just get sucked into it. But what I was concentrating on wasn't just the visuals. It was the feeling. Mm-hmm. It was how the narrative became suddenly so immersive. And as a writer, that's what Dacre and I try to do. You know, we try and make our writing so immersive that you're part of it. And like VR was a no-brainer for me. It was like, let's do it.
Right.
So what Dacre and I have committed to is we've taken our research. We've got elements of Dracula that have never been seen before in that format. So the original beginning, the ending, all our things that are going on. Again, a newly crafted protagonist through one of the sections. In one of the sections, you get to play actually as Dracula in London. So I'm not giving too much away. I've been told that I'm allowed to say these things, but it's a very powerful medium, video game, to be able to present our written adventures and our comic book adventures in an extremely immersive style. Those are the two games. We also have a few VR experiences that we're starting to look at and starting to craft. But we've had a fantastic reception for developers and publishers who really want to bring the Stokerverse to life. And I have to pay tribute to Andy Brown. Andy Brown's, we've been in meetings with tabletop games, miniature game studios, and we're also bringing the flavors of the Stokerverse to life through the miniature games. So not just classic Dracula, but steampunk and cyberpunk. Yeah, it's been a fantastic experience. Dacre and I are both collaborating on the writing for it and the research. So it's bringing us as writers into a new field, a new dimension. And wow. I want to give Dacre a spotlight in this because when I said to Dacre about this is VR especially, we are giving players the opportunity to become actors in the ultimate Dracula stage play. Dacre will be able to give you a little background about Sir Henry Irving and Bram and how that was actually presented on stage for the first time.
Yeah, it is interesting because had Bram not had this kind of anal organized brain, he never would have figured out that he needed to protect the copyright for his book. The dramatic rights of it. So like 4 or 5 days before Dracula was published, May 26th, 1897, actually the 18th, so it's 8 days before, Bram had a staged reading at the Lyceum Theater. And there's one script that exists for that. Bram actually took a couple of copies, an advanced copy of Dracula, cut it out, and pasted it on the papers. So there's your original cut and paste. And hand wrote some stage direction and had 9 actors and actresses sitting on the stage for about 6 or 7 hours. And that one script was passed between them. And so he obviously got his friends who were people that worked at the Lyceum Theater, children of some of the actors, and all they had to do was have a playbill and had to have at least 2 people in the audience. So it had to be a legit reading. And also the script had to be okayed by the Lord Chamberlain's office. In those days, there was a lot of censorship, blood, guts, vampire stuff. And so there was a lot of, the censorship about how much, the vampire biting and so on. So Lord Chamberlain's office had to okay it as a stage play. Of course, it never was a stage play during Bram's life. He was smart enough to do that one act, 6 or 7 hours of having it read. And his wife retained the rights to the stage play. She went and had it turned into a stage play with Hamilton Dean and John Balderson later. Of course, Bela Lugosi starred in it once it came to America. And then, it became a movie with those same rights being then sold. And Mrs. Stoker made a lot of money. Bram Stoker had died in 1912. So for the next 20, 30 years of her life, she lived off the income because Bram had protected those stage rights. And so that in itself is one of the good reasons why Chris and I, try to bring these things to life in VR and other cool games. People can experience it. And of course, it's now public domain, so the Stokers aren't making any more money, but we get to keep Bram's legacy alive. and the remaining members
so
of the family. And Bram still does have some great grandsons alive, and they think what we're doing is fantastic, and they're very proud of keeping Bram's memories, his work, his hard work, and his sort of ingenuity, keeping it going into the next century.
That actually, do you know what? I just want to very quickly segue. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
No, I know it does, and that's one of the reasons why way back when you brought Lord of the Future to us, it clicked. I knew that this guy wasn't just somebody who's trying to make a quick buck off of the name Bram Stoker, and it really, there was sincerity, but there was also a lot of care, but he also had a lot of creativity, which I really enjoyed, and he had that real sort of feel for the rest of Bram's writing. He had done his homework, but it also came naturally. It wasn't just made up.
Thank you, man. Thank you for that.
And that's incredible. I mean, we just pulled a tear on live, everybody.
No, you didn't. I just had an itchy eye, Jared. I had an itchy eye.
But and that's incredible. Again, you guys are doing something so incredible with such an incredible legacy, 124-year-long legacy. I mean, that's a century. It's over a century. Like, that's a long, long time. And, I've read a few of Chris's short stories, like his Terminator short story was so freaking cool. Like, one of the coolest perspectives I've ever seen, just a short story, and it was fantastic. And I can really see what you're talking about, Dacre. Like, Chris really goes into it, and he's not doing it for the money or the glory. He's doing it for the authenticity. Really trying to capture that emotion in that moment and bring it into the reader's mind, which is incredible, because you guys are doing graphic novels, which is fantastic, and you're bringing the images to us. But when you have two powerhouse writers that can bring that image into your mind, and on top of that, you're bringing us images, thank you. Thank you from all of us to you guys. Thank you for being a powerhouse couple.
Do you know? Well, there we go. We need to get rings now, Dacre. There you are. I was only going to buy this guy a pint of our beer. So with that, I'm going to segue into a few things, right? So the Stokerverse actually has a beer currently out in Alberta, in Canada. Hold on, I have to get this right. Here is our beer. So this was crafted actually by Nicholas as well. This is Dracula's Longtooth red ale. I wanted a red ale because Bram was a natural redhead.
Right.
And this is from Longriff. Okay. So this is currently on sale in Alberta, Canada. So I owe a Dacre a pint of this whenever we meet. If you
and you just put me down on that list of owed pints?
Yes. And Dacre, when you come to Fernie, I'll bootleg it down to BC for you. All right.
There we go.
So that's one of the things that we've been doing. We've also got The Voices of Dracula, which is an upcoming audio production.
Oh, actually, let's show that. Let's show that creative real quick. If I cue that up, yeah, let's cue that up. So just give us one moment, but talk to us about it. It'll pop up
Voices of Dracula. I woke up at midnight, as I kind of do, and came up with this idea for an audio drama, and just started writing it. It was a very, very strange experience, and I wrote this, and it's very focused on the characters of the original novel. It pinpoints their emotions and what they feel at certain key points. We also go into origin stories, origin story of Renfield, origin story of Van Helsing. And we also go beyond Dracula. So I don't know if anybody can see can they see the picture in a minute, Jared?
Yeah, it'll pop up. It gets queued, but sometimes when I queue things, there's a reason why they call me the
So I was very lucky that I have friends in the showbiz industry, and I have to say that I have to give them a big shout out. So Colin Baker, who Doctor Who fans will know as the Sixth Doctor, he has been a big supporter of the Stokerverse. He's become a personal friend, and I'm very grateful for the work he put into this. If you go to the Stokerverse, Stoker McAuley page on Facebook, you'll actually see a video that Colin recorded where he's wearing a sixth Doctor outfit, and he talks about being on stage as Van Helsing. And I know Dacre's met him as well, thanks to Tony Lee. So, so we've got a nice video about him talking about his experiences with Dracula. But he's our Van Helsing. And really? We were lucky enough then to get Simon Templeman, who many will know as a big bad in Buffy. I think that's the right term for the Buffy universe. It's been a long time since I watched it. But he's well known. He's an A-lister in Hollywood. And I'd just like to thank Simon for really believing in the project and coming on board as our Dracula. Video gamers will know him as Kane, from the voice of Kane from the Kane series that permeated through PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3. So, and then one of the biggest signings we actually had was Claudia Christian, who many will know as Susan Ivanova from Babylon 5. So I crafted a very specific and unique character for her. She's actually she's a Victorian thief. I'm not going to give any more away. You're going to have to buy it or listen to it on Spotify to find out exactly what she does. But it's a bit of a prequel to Dracula. You do find out why Dracula is interested in the Carfax estate, and specifically Abbey, and a sequel to Dracula as well. A little bit of a continuation of the story as well. So in amongst that, we also have the monstrous voice of Davros for Doctor Who fans, Terry Malloy. And Terry is our Renfield. And I could never, ever possibly forget, and she's made me call her this, my showbiz mum, Jessica Martin, who she was the first person to actually reduce me to tears on screen. And if you want to see that, you have to go to the Stoker McAuley YouTube channel. But she's Mina Harker. And I had an incredible experience. I wrote this play and was sending it to the cast in real time. Dacre was asleep. I have these mad hours. I work all night, sleep all day. And that's just not the only traits that I share with the traditional vampire. I actually have Dacre's laughing, he knows. I'm allergic to garlic. I can't have garlic anywhere near me, even the smell of it. I can't have silver. I can't wear silver. I actually have an old Masonic ring that I was given when I became Worshipful Master of Belfast, and it melted on my skin after 3 days. So it was real silver. And I got into trouble over that. I'm not allowed silver. And I've got a few other traits, so they're working at night and stuff like that. So Dacre finds that really funny.
This triggers a question, Chris. So, are you related to that Irish Dracula bloodline in any way, shape, or form?
I don't know.
That you were talking about earlier.
Well, that could be the discovery of another documentary. So,
right?
Maybe Dacre and I could do that. But we have been very lucky. Voices of Dracula, everybody was getting it in real time. When the scripts hit the actors, I was getting phone calls. My wife was driven mental. She was trying to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning. The phone calls were coming, and I was very excited. Chat to Colin Baker, who's Doctor Who. So I'm a massive Doctor Who fan. And another little segue: Dacre and I have written Doctor Who stories that are coming out in a Doctor Who album, annual, in the next 2 months. Dracula the Master, Dracula and the Cybermen, and Colin Baker's Doctor. So we've done it. We've actually, there we go. Voices Dracula. So that's the official. There you go. So I can't pay tribute enough to the voice talent, and for the eagle-eyed on that image, you'll actually see the Masonic symbol sitting right in the middle. I don't know if you caught that, Dacre.
Oh, hey, pull that back up, please. I want to see that. I didn't catch that. So there's actually a symbol in the image in this.
Right in the middle.
Oh, I see it. The all-seeing eye.
Yeah. So that's my tribute to Bram, who's a Freemason.
Thank you. That's wow. That's
so we are branching out into other media. We're branching out into other genres. We're really excited about it. We're talking about the second volume already.
Wow.
So if that answers your question, well, hopefully that answers your question. There we go.
Answers all my questions. Actually, I did want to bring up a question that Dominic had brought up, and we brought it up a couple of times. It was actually for Dacre. Did you see that question, Dacre? It was in relation to teachers and your name and.
I know. It's funny. Growing up in Montreal, Canada, I knew I was related to Bram Stoker, but I didn't really understand the significance of what Bram's impact was on the world. And I was off at boarding school, and I was probably 14, 15 when around Halloween they played the famous Vampire Killers or something like that, famous Vampire Hunters movie, and it was like, on this credits it was like, based on the book by Bram Stoker. And all my friends started ribbing me and giving me a rough time, noogies and everything else. And that, the way kids are, you do something cool, you got something, there's nothing better than putting you down and beating the hell out of you. So, but teachers never did anything about it. I mean, either because they were too polite or they realized, oh, this guy's terrible. He's not showing much talent towards writing. I was
probably didn't come down this bloodline.
Exactly. So they kind of left that alone and let me get on with it, and I kind of shined on the sports field instead. But I kind of caught up later on and did my work, and even to this day, I dogged my way through, doing my research, and then again, I'll be honest, when I write these novels, I get guys who can produce a better finished product than I can, but I'm certainly involved in the process, and I try my hardest to provide text, and sometimes these guys edit it and integrate it. But it's a fun process, and I've learned a lot. But while I do have the air, there was two other quick questions, and Dominic, thank you for asking that. You brought back some rough memories from school. But someone asked about the '92 Coppola Bram Stoker's Dracula movie. Jim Hart has become actually a pretty good friend of mine. He's the guy that wrote it, and it's not a realistic adaptation faithful to the novel. It's got some parts in it because they use the epistolary style. But if you think about it for a moment, and Jim Hart says this because we've done presentations together where he talks about how and why he adapted Bram's novel to become a love story. And what he did was, at that time, in '92, vampire movies were not at a big hiatus. We had Salem's Lot come out. We had Interview with the Vampire, and this was, it needed to be, a special movie. But love stories were obviously what the studios wanted, so they adapted Bram Stoker's novel to become this reincarnation of Vlad the Impaler's wife, who committed suicide, and Jim did an amazing job creating some cinematic folklore out of realistic folklore, and that's how we got this. Mina Harker is the reincarnated wife of Vlad, and that was not in the novel, but there was many things that were. So it was somewhat realistic. It's not the most faithful. The most faithful is the Louis Jourdan, in my opinion, the BBC 1977 version. So that was another one. And then somebody had asked me about Vampire Diaries. The fact that it's filmed not far from me, I'm in South Carolina, in Atlanta. I did get once invited to go to Atlanta to film. They do these DVD sets where they want little extras. And would you please come and do an interview with us? And I had to say, do you really want me to come? I haven't watched your series. But my sisters, who live here in South Carolina with me, they are avid Vampire Diaries fans. They love that stuff. And so I had to quickly come up to speed, and they sent me, the director producer sent me a couple episodes to look at. And in actual fact, it's not my thing, the sort of modern runway hot looking actors and actresses. But I will tell you this, I was impressed with their origin. It's stuff that Chris and I look into. What was their origin story? And it was a very well thought out kind of, here's vampires and werewolves in Scandinavia back in medieval days. And that origin story that created these vampires being put onto a boat, chained up in a coffin and sailed off into Never Never Land, and they end up in America. That's a pretty cool story. And so my hat's off to the creators of Vampire Diaries. They were very successful, and it hit on a number of levels. But it was just, it's not my personal thing. I love the old Victorian stuff, the cobblestone streets, the myth, the steampunk kind of idea. I love that. But hey, everything else is okay.
Oh, wait, I got a question for both of you, and this one I've been wondering myself.
That's a loaded question towards me. I know exactly what's being yelled at there. That's a loaded question, and I'm neither confirming nor denying. Rumors about my...
This is how rumors get started, guys.
I'm going to tell if you don't, Chris, because I actually have mine right here.
Yeah, there you go. No.
Okay.
There's your answer, Digi.
There we go. My coffin is a little too large to show on screen. It's not in this room.
Oh, Chris. A little bit of flexing going on there. It's okay. It's okay.
It actually is.
Oh, we got another question coming from the field. With Poe being brought up and modernizing Dracula,
Yes. Yeah.
are we going to be seeing other creatures, monsters, secret societies, Lovecraft, the Yellow King? Wow, great question.
Here we go. So, yes, the answer is yes to that. Underpinning our Dracula is a form of cosmic horror that's popularized by Lovecraft. In fact, the White Worm is the underpinning of our cosmic horror, and a very unique flavor that the Stokerverse brings. So that should be interesting to anybody who's a fan of Lovecraft, what we're trying to do. If you go to the Stokerverse, if Stoker McAuley Facebook page, you will see some of the works I've penned, and it does tease at what Dacre and I are bringing forward in terms of cosmic horror. So nobody's illusion has just said, Chris says Dracula confirmed. I'm not confirming or denying. I am going to allow, do you know what? I'm going to allow Kate, our PA, to either confirm or deny that, and any subsequent publicists that any publisher of ours wants to bring out. Just as a brief segue, as a bit of a humorous segue, I have no problems with hot actors and especially hot actresses. So if Dacre and I get invited to any sort of TV shows where there's any of those present, I'll be there. I'll be perfectly happy.
Well, be sure to invite me.
As long as the lights aren't too bright, though, Chris.
Right.
Yes, you're giving away another secret. Yes, yeah. So I do have a bit of a sunlight aversion as well.
Oh, who would have guessed that? The son of the Irish Dracula. Who would have guessed that one?
Yes.
So we've got actually I can say who the third winner was. Just give me 1 second to find it, because I was just informed and then it lost me. They'll have to retell me. We did find out who the third winner of the swag pack was. I'll announce it once they repost it in my notifications. But I do have a good question for you both. What are some of the main differences you've noticed in publishing a novel compared to creating a graphic novel?
Well, I could say one thing, because obviously I've only been one, but it's not easy, especially when you're adapting a novel, to take a 400-page book and have to figure out how you're going to reduce that to these little bubbles where people are speaking, these text boxes, and conveying the same idea through just because the team of people doing this all have to be connected. And this is what Chris does so well, is kind of like the guy, circus master. He's got, the artist people, the sketching guys, the coloring people, all these different things that go through. It's so much easier to write a novel, even if you're collaborating with somebody. This has been my experiences. I've worked with Ian Holt. I've worked with J.D. Barker. We're writing a story, and you got an editor that beats the heck out of you every now and then. With what Chris has had to do is he takes information from me, he massages it, he's got to get the letterer and the artist and all these different, it's a three-ring circus. It's incredible. And the investment up front, having to get the publisher to pay for all this before it's even out the door. So I'm just blown away at the amount of work, and my hat is off to all the creative people that have done this for many years before I came on the scene. And I just think it's fantastic, but it's a lot of work and dedication and financial output before this thing even hits the streets.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, Dacre's an international best-selling author, so he knows what he's talking about when it comes to novels. But when it comes to, we actually have another novel coming out. It's the next product. It's called Dracula's Bedlam, and Dacre and I have written that with award-winning sci-fi author John Peel, who wrote a lot of Dalek stories for Doctor Who. He was actually the creator of the Daleks, gave him his blessing to write a lot of. But he's also done Star Wars and Star Trek and different things. Every genre you can think of, he's written for James Bond as well. So we've been crafting this novel together, which is it's based in the asylum, Dr. Sewer's asylum. You meet various characters like Jack the Ripper and all sorts of things that's happening. So again, it's a continuation and a sideways story. We have some graphic novel elements in it. So Dacre and I both like the concept of mixed media. So audios, we've got our Dracula's Bedlam text novel, but inside that, we have graphic novel elements. So we have comic book pages. So the first couple of comic book pages is actually the origin of the vampire. And then the next comic book pages, the next series, 20 pages, is Redfield's origin story, which hasn't really been detailed before. So that's been an interesting process. But yes, creating a graphic novel it's a labor of love. And I think you have to have a very, very clear vision at the start of exactly what you want. And I've been very lucky when I write scripts, I have a very clear vision of it. That clarity can't stop your artist from expressing their own creativity. So you have to also be relaxed. And if you're artist, you have to trust your artist. And if your artist comes forward and says, what about this panel, or what about doing this, and what about doing that? Now I can speak personally about Jessica. Jessica and I had conversations, why we became very close. We were talking for 3 or 4 hours a night on pages.
Wow.
And I gave her that openness of, hey, show me what you want to do. And Dacre is so receptive to those ideas. That's why Dacre and I have this perfect partnership when it comes to graphic novels, because he's very receptive. He never tell you, but he's very progressive when it comes to narrative. But I know he is. And he's wandering about here, so he hasn't heard me. So
no, he's about to lose the power in his computer, so I had to find the check real fast.
So it's been a great and very, very positive experience. Now our graphic novels are continuing on. I want to give fans of the Stokerverse and people who've tuned in an exclusive, which I've been allowed to do today. There's actually two exclusives. But before I do, yes,
you do. No, you go ahead, read it to the crowd, Chris, and then swagway right into it.
I hope I say this username
That's
correctly, because you know what? It's epic. Well done, Dave. This is epic. I wish I thought of something like this. Congratulations to user Dave Wanstash. Right, Dave Wanstash, for unlocking your badge and winning the swag giveaway. There we go. So there we go. I hope you enjoy your badge. So yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating concept, and we are actually we're now teaming up with a new graphic novel company, and I'm going to let Dacre announce that, and then I'm going to announce our new another publisher that we're using for other things as well as audios and novels. But I want to say that a lot of our products are going to be mixed media, so we're using artists and crafting graphic novel pages in for novels. we're very passionate about the visuals and things like that. So, you know, that's been really important to us. You know,
I just wanted to hit on, you know, how I found out that you were really passionate about the imagery and things like that is when I got to see your work on In Flesh and Spirit with Baron
Mr. Raka. I have to learn as well. Mr. Raka. He's now part of the Stokerverse. Here's another exclusive. Baron's now joined us as part of the Stokerverse. He's cutting a music album, and we're exploring his character in audios and
fantastic
and game format as well.
If we've already got Count Dr. Chris McAuley, we've got to have a Baron, right? So
right? I agree. Have you seen the Baron's black and white picture that he did? He looks just like the movie star from that old black and white Dracula movie. Yes,
well, tell them what he was the model for, because
he was the model. So Lynn, who Dacre knows very well,
Lynn Lugosi.
She's approved them, and Baron and I have been friends for years, and you know, when he gave me In Flesh and Spirit, it was a black and white comic, and I looked at it and I went, you know, Baron has a beautiful face. He's got a fantastic presence, and I couldn't help myself but take some of it and start to colour it. And I passed that to him, and I said, well, what about this? And he went, Chris, let's do it. And I think that's been some of my best work. And then it went to Darren, and Darren picked it up very quickly. You know, now it's on sale with Tidal Wave, and I think doing very well. But yeah, Baron and I have had a conversation. He's a massive Stoker fan. We have a video, which I'm sure you're going to post the links to, where Baron and I have a little bit of an interview to introduce him to the fans. But he's an acclaimed heavy metal rock star who has an incredible fan base for a start. For anybody who knows anything about heavy metal, he knew Peter Steele. And he knew the lead singer of the Plasmatics, and that name escapes me. I'm sorry for that, because she was an icon. But this is what happens when you start to approach 40. She was an icon, and Baron knew her.
Wait, Chris, did you just say you're approaching 40?
Yes.
Oh my heck! You're such a youngin.
That's in this century. Okay, he's not talking.
Seriously. Look at this youngin. You look at this youngin over here, Dacre. He's all like, "Oh, I'm almost there," and we're like, "Oh, we're way past there."
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so we're very lucky. We've got art that's coming out as well. Johnny Garno, who's related to Terry Hardin. She's worked with Terry Hardin, famous Disney legendary Terry Hardin. And I've seen part of the new painting, so we're actually endorsing paintings as well, and those are coming out. Those are specific Stokerverse paintings that will be available to purchase. So we've gone into the art market, we've gone into the music market. Dacre's got a big hero, Chris de Burgh, who I'm kind of related to. And Chris has reached out to me, interested in the Stokerverse. So there may be a little chat with Dacre and Chris de Burgh about Bram Stoker and the importance that Bram Stoker had to Irish society, literature, and spirituality, because Chris is quite a very spiritual person. That may be coming in the future as well. So there's a lot of things that are happening, you know, and it's just fascinating. Everything's great.
Hey, Chris, can I just interrupt and say that as we begin to sort of wind this down, you did ask me to make that announcement of that comic company that we're branching out and utilizing as well. So, you know, you can give further details, but it does give me great pleasure to say that Scar Comics in the UK, we're going to be working with them to actually create some interesting new Dracula content. And I'm especially interested because they said, yeah, we can help get it out next year, which is the 125th anniversary of the publication of Dracula, May 26th. 2022 is 125. So it's really cool to be partnering up with Scar Comics. You can see obviously on the screen, here's their website. Lots of cool things to come from Stoker McAuley, the Stokerverse, and Scar Comics, and all the other folks that Chris has been mentioning, because they are all part of this, deeply from our heart. We can't do it ourselves, but when we connect with these very talented people who have the same vision that we do to bring Bram's legacy back, you got to kind of follow the template that Chris and I have sort of dragged out of the grave, so to speak. They've drank the Kool-Aid, they drank the wine, whatever it is you want to call it. They're part of us, and it's really cool to have these partners. Hopefully your fans and you guys will benefit from that as the entertainment sort of world comes back to life and gets to see what Bram Stoker originally intended, and hopefully in the next century.
And my announcement then is that Dacre and I are partnering up with Hellbound Books for audios, novels, factual novels, and fictional novels. There we go, Hellbound Books Publishing. Dacre and I are both linked to the Horror Writers Association now, and Hellbound is a big proponent and has been supported by the Horror Writers Association. So I'd like to thank James for welcoming us on board with that as well. So yeah, expect lots of new content, lots of more different media content in the next 12 to 16 months. Keep your eye on Stoker McAuley Facebook. We've got some Instagram accounts, all sorts of things, so go and Google those. And you'll be kept up to date on everything that we're doing. And I'm just going to again tip the hat to Kate and say, Kate will be probably making an awful lot of these things more publicly visible to you guys as she continues. And we're also very grateful for our partnership with Andrews UK, because he's been able to bring Virgin's Embrace and Voices of Dracula Volume 1 to our audience. So it's been a very enjoyable experience to work with Paul and his team as well.
Yep. And thank you, Jared, and CryptoComics for making this happen. So really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
The honor is ours, guys. The honor is ours. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This has been a real treat. We're hitting an hour and 54 minutes, so we are going to wind this down. I'm going to wind this down with smash that like button, click that bell, subscribe, show these people some love, go to their socials, follow them, stick with Stokerverse, everybody, because these guys are making history. And they're doing it the right way, everybody. They're taking Bram Stoker, and they're not trying to change him. They're trying to make it so that we can actually really experience what he had planned for us. And a true genius always has a lot of things in the shadows. So, thank you, everybody, for being here. Like, share, and subscribe. My gosh! Wait, Corey, he's going to tell me something. Oh, yeah, whatever, Fry. You can't tell me that. Go ahead. Tell me again. What are you saying? Do it again.
It's not okay.
Oh,
thank you guys for joining us on the stream.
Thank
really
you, Fry.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
On behalf of our whole team. And thank you, Jared, for running it. You did a great job, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
listen
definitely.
to him. He's so sweet.
He is. All right. See you, everybody.
All right, guys. Thank you all very much. Bye.
Bye.